Good afternoon, everybody, and a really warm welcome to everyone joining us this afternoon for our third episode of This is Simulation. So This is Simulation is a brand new web series brought to you by Sim & Skills, and we're hoping to champion all the latest innovations in healthcare simulation. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can watch them back now at your leisure. We'll make sure there's a link going in the chat shortly so you can watch our previous two episodes. So I'm Nicola and I'm your host. And during this series, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our amazing guests who have given up their time to join us. Each of our speakers works in a different area of healthcare simulation, in different job roles. And they're going to talk to you about their area of specialism, sharing practical insights that you can take back to your own organisation. Just before we get underway with today's episode and today's guest, just a few housekeeping things for you. Please do use the chat box to let us know where you're joining us from today. Just make sure the little tab is switched to everyone so everybody can see your messages in there. And if you want to ask any questions today, because I'm sure lots of you will have lots of questions that you want answering, there is a Q&A function as well at the bottom of your screen. If you pop any questions in there, just so we don't lose them in the chat as people are putting questions, putting comments into the chat. We can put questions in the Q&A and then we can keep track of it. You can also vote questions as well. So if there's a question that you have seen that you want to answer as well, you can upvote that question in there. So today's session is going to be recorded and the recording is going to be emailed out to you. So if you need to jump off anywhere or you want to share it with your team, then the recording will be with you tomorrow. So now on to today's episode and today's guests. We're really, really excited to be joined by Emily Browne today. Emily is the Head of Education at the Midlands Air Ambulance, which is a fantastic charity who carry out life-saving missions on a daily basis. Emily is a nurse by background, and prior to her role at the Air Ambulance, she was the Associate Dean for Innovation and Enterprise at the University of Staffordshire. So Emily's going to talk to us today about the importance of using the right technology at the right time and for the right purpose. Always a really important topic, but there's not particular relevance at the moment when so many budgets across universities and NHS trusts are being really squeezed. So Emily, welcome to This is Simulation. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and have a chat and hopefully have some questions and share with you my thoughts really and my experiences around technology and simulation in healthcare. So I'm going to now attempt to share my screen. At this point, things could go horribly wrong as I'm about to talk about technology, and if I don't get this right, it never looks good. But we'll give it a go. Here we are. Should be sharing my screen with you now. Hopefully you can see that. Fantastic. Okay. So as Nicola said, my name's Emily Browne from Midlands Air Ambulance charity, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey really with using technology and simulation and all of that sort of excitement. So I've had a wide and varied career. I've done simulation in all sorts of different environments. And as Nicola sort of said at the beginning, I've been, nursing on the front line, nursing in hospitals, and nursing within universities, and now here at the Air Ambulance. I've had a fantastic career. I've had loads of really exciting experiences and been able to do all sorts of interesting things. But actually, when I did my training as a nurse, there was no simulation. My university had a SimMan 3G that they wheeled out for open days, and then nobody ever got to touch it. You'd only get the experience of using that mannequin on an open day. So that was really difficult. And a lot of the simulation that we had was very or what we had, they called simulation, was more OSCEs. And it was very punitive. It was very scary. It wasn't really something that was going to inspire you or help you on that journey into healthcare. And I think one of the really important things is that we're getting simulation right and we're getting the technology right so that people are having that experience that makes a difference to them and their learning journey and joining healthcare. we now know that students aren't getting the same experience that they've had previously, that there's more reliance on colleges and universities to provide that simulation, because in practice they're not always seeing all of the things, or there's not the time for them to have that learning that used to take place. But I love a bit of technology, and I'm very pleased that I've been able to actually share my screen to prove that I can use the technology. But there's lots of different technology out there. And it's really important that we have the right technology at the right time and for the right reasons. So the use of technology is very difficult, and what we should use and when we should use it are decisions that we're having to make when we're thinking about buying things. But sometimes that decision is a decision that we're going to have to live with for a really long time, because the funding and the ability to just buy things isn't necessarily there in most organisations. I mean, the other title for this presentation, and I've often said this, is that I really should have married rich, because I do like spending other people's money. I do like being out there and deciding what technology to buy. I love nothing more than a conference and the ability to go and look at all of the kit and equipment and different things that I could potentially have and bring back to my areas. But what I have to remember is that it needs to work for the environment that I'm currently working in. So it can be really overwhelming with all of these different options and projects that you have as to what you buy. And if you're new to this, if you're new to the purchasing of technology within healthcare education, it's what is that choice? How do I know that this is a good product? How do I evaluate this? What has just because everybody else has got it doesn't mean that's the right thing. So it is really, really difficult. That decision of, do I need a SimMan 3G? Do I need an Aries? Do I need a cut suit? Do I need a task trainer? Are all questions that we're having to ask about the technology that we're using. VR goggles, VR rooms, all of those different things. And there's been really rapid growth in this market over the past few years. Probably the run up to COVID, and I think everybody now uses COVID as a marker in life. But that run up to COVID, we were seeing a real explosion in the technologies available. And since COVID, we've seen more technology, but different technology. We've seen a lot more VR technology coming through. We've seen a lot more tablet-based and screen-based simulations coming through and being available. So all of this needs investment, and all of this needs us to consider what that means for our students. I don't know, and I think one of the questions that I'm asking you really, and I don't necessarily know the answer to, is, does all of this technology, does it lead to better simulation? And I pondered this yesterday when I was thinking about talking to you today. And does more technology, does all of this equipment, does it mean better for the students? I'm not entirely convinced that it always does. I think that actually what we need is quality. What we need is good teaching. What we need is good facilitating, and then we need to be thinking carefully about our technology choices, because there's a really big risk that we suffer from all the gear and no idea, because we've bought everything that's out there. And that kind of brings me on to my joy really of buying the technology. But all that's out there isn't necessarily everything that you need, and there are things that I've purchased for simulation that I didn't use appropriately, that I maybe regret buying, that I maybe didn't pan out in the way I expected it to. So that's always quite interesting. Just because it's shiny, just because everybody else has got one, just because that's what we're being told we need to really think about whether it is what we need. And for me, my Achilles heel with this was VR goggles. So I went down the route of VR goggles, but actually if you've got 300 nursing students or paramedic students and you've got 20 VR goggles, that experience is going to be incredibly diluted. That experience is going to be very difficult to replicate. And actually that's possibly not the best use of the money, and that's possibly not that education goal that we're looking for with the technology that we've got. It's great, it serves a purpose, but is its place in universities and colleges, or is its place more in CPD or postgraduate learning, or learning within a workplace? And I think maybe that is. The other thing with a lot of this sort of technology, and I found particularly with the VR goggles, was that I needed more support to be able to create the content, and how does that work? And these are some of the things that we need to think about when we're buying technology. What's the support like for this? Do I need add-ons? How often will I need to update it? And it can be a really difficult question to ask. So I think thinking about what you have in the environments that you're in now, what do you have in your environment? Do you have things that you regret buying? Do you have things that you wish you'd bought more of? And there will be those little nuggets there that sitting on the shelf gathering dust that nobody is ever going to use. And, you know, just because somebody else has it doesn't mean that you need to get it as well. So we're definitely thinking about that. What is the right thing for me in the role that I'm in? And I've been lucky enough to have lots of different roles and need lots of different technologies. When moving from one area to the next, I definitely needed to think about the different type of equipment that I need for the environment that I'm working in. So I'm just going to go through a few of my favourite things. So I love a mannequin. I really do love a mannequin. Oh, I've chopped Aries' head off there on my screen. But there's lots of different mannequins out there. And it's very much dependent on your learners as to the type of mannequin that you need. I love the CAE range, the Aries and Juno and Apollos. They're great. They have some really good functionality. They're particularly good for, I think, pre-registration students. So maybe T-level pre-registration students who are needing to start to put everything together, and we're teaching them how to do a blood pressure, feeling for pulses, listening to chests, all of those kind of things. These full-size mannequins are fantastic for that learning. But actually where I work now, we are tending to go more for the sim bodies mannequins. So they are much more realistic, because the people that I'm training now, I don't need to teach them how to listen to a chest. I don't need to teach them how to palpate an abdomen. We're talking about advanced practitioners, post-registration learners who the bigger issue is going to be around the human factors and the critical decision making, and therefore having a mannequin that is more realistic in terms of weight and look and those kind of things is more key and fits better with the sort of learning that they are needing to have and how they're developing within that training. I love a standardized patient as well. I mean, there's nothing better than somebody who's actually going to scream and shout. And there are lots of different things available. I've used in the past amputees in action. They are fantastic for, you know, being able to demonstrate a limb that's missing and act with the pain or the expected response that you're going to have from that casualty. And that's brilliant. It's really helpful. But all of this comes at different costs. And all of it is going to depend on that learning or that environment that you need to put your learners into. So choosing the right mannequin, choosing the right method is going to be the right thing. If you've got 300 students, one mannequin isn't going to cut it. If you've got 10 students, maybe one mannequin, or do you just need standardized patients? So thinking about numbers, replicability, and how you're using those. And I think another key thing that we're seeing now with mannequins is the ability to have different ethnicities, to have male and female mannequins, to have more lifelike, more representative mannequins within our set is great. I'd like to move away from the very pasty Resusci Annies that everybody uses. I mean, mine are, I think I've bleached them that much now from cleaning them, but you know, they're not great. They're not very representative, and we need to move away from that within our training so that we're replicating real life within that. So the next exciting thing that I've recently purchased, and I am very excited about owning is some iSimulates. And again, these are expensive pieces of kit, but they're fantastic. It's before things like iSimulate and other models are available, were available to us, it was we were very much having to say the obs to candidates. It was very much breaking the realism of simulations. But the iSimulate really offers the opportunity to have that immersive simulation happening. And it comes with all the cables and all of the different things. You can use different interfaces. And I use my iSimulates all the time. So I'm using them for teaching ALS. I'm using them for all of our scenario-based things when we're looking at pacing and cardioversion and different technologies, different uses of technology in that way. It's really helpful to have that educational screen. Prior to that, using live defibrillators in advanced life support courses or in simulation always gave me a little bit of fear that somebody was going to get accidentally shocked, even though, you know, you put in the safety blocks on and things. But the candidates would always see you pressing the button to change the rhythm. And the only thing we could do on that was show the rhythm. There wasn't the ability to show a blood pressure and a pulse and changes in that. So it's that ability to show the dynamic change in observations that I really like about these. But as I say, other things are available. SimMon is a great resource that's downloadable. It used to be free. Now I think it's about £20 a download. There's SimVS. There's various other things like that. And now we're seeing like the EPR forms coming through in this similar format, because we need to be replicating practice for our learners. We need them to be seeing in college, in university, in training, the same equipment that we're using out in the real world environment. Because actually, if you're training using something different or you're faking everything too much, that's not going to help embed that learning, and that's going to possibly give you more problems around that learning for those students. So love a bit of iSimulate. And the next one, I think, you know, everybody thinks it's all the, you know, the massive big ticket items and mannequins and iSimulates, but I do love a task trainer. And I definitely think that there is a place for task trainers. I know that there's been a bit of a movement, oh, we won't use a task trainer, we need to do full simulation. But we need to teach people first. We need to practice the tactile skills, the repetitive practice of that task training allows us to have. So task trainers are really useful, but for the right thing at the right time, they are a great resource. I love an immersive room, so much so that I'm carrying out some studies on the use of immersive rooms at the moment. But immersive rooms are great when you're thinking about your facility and how you're going to use that and thinking about your budget. So if building environments is fantastic, and if you've got never-ending budget, then build a GP surgery and a hospital ward and a maternity ward and a house environment, and that is great because we're practicing then in the environments that we learn in, because students shouldn't do all of their learning in a brightly lit, beautifully clean environment, which might not represent what they're going to be using in practice, particularly if they're going into district nursing or paramedicine. But you can't afford that, and we don't necessarily have the capability to build those sorts of facilities. So an immersive room is a really great midpoint. Without the projectors on, it's a big square grey box, and I often use the big square grey box for exams or other things when I'm not using it for the immersive element. But the immersive room makes a massive difference. And just by putting something on the walls, by putting some volume in that room, by changing things around a little bit, the realism really hits home. And the biggest place that I can see this change, and I see it in students at all levels, but I teach first aid here at the Air Ambulance. And when we consolidate that training at the end of the first aid course and we go into the immersive room, it really clicks for people. This is what we're doing. This is not an inanimate object. This isn't a Resusci Annie that I'm using. This is a room. There are people, there are sounds, and I'm now having to pull all of this information that I've got. You know, we can all sit there in lectures and talks and go, yeah, I know that, I can do that. But when it comes to it, can we do that? And can we do that in that more challenging and more realistic environment? And that's what immersive room does for us. And I love an immersive room. In fact, I don't want to go anywhere that doesn't have an immersive room anymore. Iris is a great platform that I've used in various different roles now, and this offers, this helps with that pedagogy, with that standardisation of simulation writing. Gone are the days where we're writing our simulation on the back of a fag packet, as it were, and coming into the room, and we've all been there when someone's gone, okay, this is Bob. Bob's 42. He's had chest pain since this morning, and now he's short of breath. That's not the best way to be running a simulation. We should be standardized. We should be knowing what's going to happen with this casualty. We should be planning that. We should be thinking about our learning objectives beforehand. And Iris is a great way to get your faculty to write good quality simulation, to get your faculty into the habit of really thinking about the simulation rather than just doing it as an added extra. And one of the latest developments that they've had through that is that student-led simulation. And actually, there can be a lot of learning from getting the students to write their own simulations. I think we've often been at the point where we are paternalistic about it. We're writing the simulations and the students are taking part in those. We need to be flipping that around. We need to be getting the students to write the simulations and run them for one another. So to get a student to think about, how is this going to run? How am I going to show somebody the management of a patient who has an asthma attack? Or how am I going to manage a patient who needs some personal care? By getting the students to think about what that should look like and could be like in a simulation, and to think about that transition of observations, is a really good way of getting them to think about that casualty, getting them to think about the patient. And to the point that, do you even need to run the simulation afterwards? The part of writing it is a different way of thinking about writing for a patient. And instead of writing a case study, we're writing a simulation. And that's a really interesting move that we're seeing across some universities. And this, you know, hopefully is things that you guys are already doing and you're thinking of doing, but these are some of the tools that I've used to get there and to manage that. Love a bit of Blue Peter. I was brought up on Blue Peter and sticky back plastic and, you know, waiting for the washing up bottle to be empty so that I could build a rocket out of it. But making it yourself and having that ability to make stuff yourself is really, really useful. I've recently had to make some hysterotomy task trainers for my teams for emergency pre-hospital C-sections. But I didn't do that on my own. I don't know how many technicians we've got here listening to this, but technicians, you are worth your weight in gold. You are the best thing since sliced bread. Technicians really make a difference, and technicians, given the time, given the resources, can absolutely make you things that you didn't even know you needed. And I really want to emphasize the importance to those of you who employ technicians or work with technicians. Give them that opportunity. They can tell you what you need before you know you need it. So it's not academic staff saying, I need this. Ask your technicians, what do I need? This is what I want to achieve, is going to be really, really important. So giving them the time to develop and play is really, really key. So that kind of brings me on to that kind of bit of what comes first, the pedagogy or the technology. And in an ideal world, we'd think about what we wanted and then we'd buy the right technology to be able to deliver that effectively. But often we've got to work with the kit that we've got to work with the technology we already have, we've got to make it ourselves. And And we often have to then design what we deliver around what we've got, which isn't an ideal position to be in. But I think that's probably the position that most people are in. And we also need to think about that, designing what we want around the number of students that we've got to put through it. So there's a big difference between needing to put 20 students through something and 300 students. And for those of you working at universities who had that 300 simulated hours you could use for nursing practice, for example, seems like an absolutely fantastic idea, but actually the execution of the repetition and the ability to make that meaningful is really, really difficult. And I don't have all the answers to that, but it is very much around creating the right thing, creating how are we going to work that to meet these educational outcomes, these learning objectives that we've got with the technology that we have. And it is that, when we get that elusive funding, what are we going to spend it on? What's going to have the most impact? How is this going to really make a difference to the delivery of the content that I have? So we need to think about who we're training. So there's all sorts of different people that you guys are training. I'm sure you're coming from all sorts of different fields. So who are we training and how are we training them? So we do need to think about the learners that we've got first, because it's going to differ. As I've been saying, just because you're doing it one way on one set of courses or one set of agendas doesn't mean that that's going to be a fit for everybody. So what do your learners need to learn? And then how are we going to teach them that? What's going to last? How do we wisely spend that money? We use sim bodies here, but they get trashed because they're manhandled, and we're forever having to repair them. So I need to know how to do silicone and various things like that. So it's the other little hidden costs, I suppose you could describe them, of your technology choice, of your equipment choice that you have. If you haven't got the time or capacity to be doing some of those things, then you might need to think differently about the technology that you buy. So it is really key to be thinking about, who are my learners? How many of them are there? What is the most robust? What is the most effective? And how am I going to use that? And that's going to also link to how much money you've got. So we were really lucky in that kind of COVID-y, pre-COVID era. Health Education England were throwing money at universities and organisations to buy technology, and that's great. Often came with very short timelines and very specific requirements, and I think this is possibly where many people have fallen in the trap of having cupboards of things that they don't necessarily use, or things that haven't been thought out as well as they could have been. In universities, you will have things that you can buy. You'll have to go through all sorts of procurement things as you would with the NHS. And I know a lot of my NHS colleagues are still using the same mannequin they bought 20 years ago. So, buy wisely. Organisations like the military are definitely thinking about things differently, because they will have targeted needs depending on what's happening. So they will have different ways that they need to purchase and different things that they need to train with. And certainly in a charity, I can't just spend money because people donate money to our charity to put helicopters in the sky and save lives. But part of saving those lives is training our staff. But I need to be really thoughtful about how I spend charity funds and the equipment that I buy. I can't just have things. They really have to be thought about. And we are all in that same boat. And I think that kind of brings it back to, how important is the technology? Do I want it because I want it and it's fancy, or is it going to make a difference? Am I going to, with good design, with passionate staff, with knowledgeable staff, and with good delivery, can I make do with other things? Are there other ways that I can use the things that I've got, or think about the things that I buy? And that's, money's always going to be an issue for all of us, and it's always going to be difficult. But it's the harder it is maybe to get the money, the more we're going to think about what we want. But bearing in mind, things will change, and we might need to adapt that thinking around what we want to buy. So how do we teach? How do we teach using this technology? And I think that's that. I go back to that. All the gear and no idea. We really need to be making sure that it is purposeful. Task trainers are great, and I really think task trainers have a place. And it's really important to embed those skills, to have that repetitive practice. And task trainers are designed for that hard wear and tear, for that repetitive ability to intubate or manage an airway or do venipuncture and auscultating chests and things like that within task trainers is a really, really useful resource. But years ago when I trained, that was all we had, or we only had task trainers, small pieces of sponge to inject into. But, in real life, we don't inject small pieces of sponge, we inject people's arms or, other parts. So it's really important that we then take that task training through to simulation. So we practice it in task and then we put it together with all of those other elements in simulation. And this image is a sim body with the use of the iSimulate and our immersive room to be able to create a much more immersive environment and put together multiple skills and multiple practices all together within that simulation. So what I came up with was something called the 5-stage approach, which some of you may have heard me talk about before. But this was an approach to get people from knowledge through to simulation, because it isn't linear. It is a backwards and forwards model, and we do need to have a structure. I think some people are scarred by simulation, and that's because they haven't had that build up or that preparation. They've been put in simulation, and simulation was felt as being quite punitive. We're gonna test them, we'll trick them, and you'll pretend to be a doctor or you'll pretend to be this. We need to be running simulation properly, but we need to have that framework structure underneath. So the 5-stage approach starts with those keynote lectures, that written and audio content of this is how you do something. So we'll take venipuncture, for example. You're going to learn about why that's useful, how you're going to do it. You're going to watch videos on it. You're going to understand the pathophysiology. And then you're going to go into skill sessions and you're going to practice. You've got that repetitive practice of practice doing that technique, getting that muscle memory there. And then you're going to go into facilitated simulation sessions where your patient requires venipuncture. But now you've got a whole person who you need to have a discussion with, you need to get consent from, you need to add all of those other elements to that human factors bit to build that up. And this is facilitated sim. This is the bit where the facilitator will step in and say, I'm just going to stop you there and help and correct and manage that. And you might go up and down that 1 to 3 several times, and you might start to introduce multiple skills in that 1 to 3 section. And then you're going to come on to 4, which is your simulation activity. And this is proper simulation, pre-brief simulation and debrief. So we're really putting lots of different things together now to test that student, to bring all of those skills together. And this is less facilitated. This is allowing them to make mistakes, because we learn from our mistakes. If we stop students at the point that they're going to make an error and correct them, they will always think, well, I would have noticed that, or I didn't do that, or I would have corrected, and we'll never really know. Allowing them to make an error and correct it is really good for learning, we can pick that apart in the debrief. And this is where our simulation needs to be succinct and purposeful. And our debrief should always be twice the length of the simulation activity, as a kind of rule of thumb, as it were. And then, stage 5 is off into practice and being able to put that into practice in the real world. But this approach, you go up and down this ladder, using it as you need to introduce those skills for the students as we go along, and using the right technology at those different points. So we're building up from videos to task trainers to full-size mannequins, and then we're going back down to task trainers again, and then we're coming back up and using mannequins again. So that's how we're going to do that. And we can apply this approach and this learning to students of any level. So, this could be applied to T-level students, to our pre-registration, post-registration, CPD and professional development. So I use this framework approach to all of the courses that we write and deliver here at the Air Ambulance for our CPD and professional development courses. I use this within pre-registration and certainly able to support colleges implement this into their T-level student studies. And it's thinking about what's going to work best for your students and how are you going to operate this. So potentially for T-level courses, you know, do you need task trainers? Dependent on the skills that you might need, possibly not. Maybe you need things like a Lucina or a Juno that you can practice those skills on that full body, because actually we're thinking more about holistic care of these people. We're having to, you know, have those face-to-face discussions that you can't have with an inanimate object. And, you know, we can take blood pressure, we can listen to chest, we can do different things upon that full mannequin. As we go into that pre-registration and post-registration, we might actually see more of a need for task trainers to supplement and enhance some of that skills capability and that recognition of different things as part of examination or part of task, and then bring that through into simulation on either standardized patients or full-sized mannequins. So it's really thinking about who it's for and what technology really meets the needs of those learners, and thinking about, you know, what are the governing bodies asking for? You know, what does the HPCP need their students? What does the NMC need their students to be having at the point of registration? And are they able to get that? A lot of areas are struggling with placements, and placements are struggling with experiences. So thinking about what you've got and how you can enhance that. But what we don't have is a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. We know that programs change. We know that situations change. There might be more money tomorrow. There probably won't be, but you know, it might happen. But how do we know what to use? You know, I can tell you what I've used, what I think. You know, as I say, love a bit of shopping. Love nothing better than a conference and a look at a new simulator or mannequin or task trainer. But the best thing that we've got is one another, and the ability to meet, to get together, to have these discussions. How did you get over this? How did you work out that? You know, the hysterotomy trainer that I talked to you about before, maybe somebody here is in the group of people that helped give me the idea and help me work out how I was going to build that and make that. So getting together as groups and not holding on to what you've got. If you've done something that's brilliant, if you've done something that is inventive, tell people about it. Let us know, because we're all out there searching for answers, wondering what's going to be next, wondering how we can make what we've got work and how we can make what we've got do the things that we need. So it's really important. There's some great WhatsApp groups that I'm part of, like people making things in tech groups and things like that. And there's a lot of people out there who'll help, who'll come and give you some support, or will send you stuff, or send you ingredients. And be good, you know, be kind, share. We're all in the same boat. It's really useful practice to share that with one another. And I think that's one of the great things that you know, Simmons Skills does with this today. You know, getting people in, getting people to talk about the things that they do, and sharing that is so important. Having the conferences and the events so that we can get together, we can have these discussions, and we can really make a difference to the environments that we're in. So we don't know what the future holds. We don't know whether we've bought the right thing. We hope we've bought the right thing, but it's always, how are we going to make this work? How long can it last? How can I adapt it? I saw a great use of an old Megacode Kelly recently, where they'd stripped out all of the electrics, and they were using it as a C-section mannequin. So they'd hollowed out the abdomen, and they were putting a baby into a balloon, filling it with water, and then putting a silicone abdomen over the top to be able to, you know, create a C-section. Fantastic. Amazing use of a Megacode Kelly that people were like, what am I going to do with this now? The electronics don't work. How am I going to use this? This is, again, where your technologists or your sim techs are worth their weight in gold, because they can do that for you. They can tell you how that can be used. So we're thinking about the future, we're thinking about our learners, we're thinking about how are we going to get that right technology in the right place. And we've just got to then think about how that applies. Don't go to the first thing that you see. Don't go to the shiniest thing that you can see. Sometimes the cheapest option is the best option. Sometimes the more expensive option is the way you need to go. Sometimes there's something in between. It really doesn't matter what you buy as long as you use it. Whether you buy the cheapest thing off the shelf, but you use it and you use it well and it's purposeful and it fits and it suits the pedagogy, that is the best buy you'll ever make. But if you buy the most expensive thing out there, as long as you use it and you use it well, then it's not the most expensive thing. It's worth it to you. There is nothing I hate more than seeing I use a mega code, not a mega code, a SimMan 3G as an example. Had colleagues who said, oh, we have to have a SimMan 3G because his tongue swells and he shakes to simulate a fit. And I'm like, if that's the only reason you're buying a 60,000, 70,000 pound mannequin, that's really not cost effective. So it's really important. People who don't put fluids in mannequins that can have fluids, people that don't put needles in mannequins that can have needles. If your mannequin can be IO'd, IO it. If it can pee and bleed and all of that, do it. If you're not going to use it for that, don't buy it because you don't need it. So you need to be knowing that you're going to use it for its purpose, and then of course it is valuable to you and it is worth that purchase. So it's really the biggest bugbear I have is people buying technology and not using it because it was expensive and therefore they have to keep it pristine. A pristine piece of kit is an unused piece of kit, is a unneeded piece of kit. And our tech teams are amazing and they keep things really well, but things get damaged, things get used, but that's a good use of things. So that's just my little high horse that I'm on about that, buying the right technology. So I think really just to kind of surmise what I'm saying, when you're thinking about technology, when you're thinking about teaching, you need to be asking yourself, why am I thinking about this technology? Why am I doing this? Do I need to do this? Is simulation the right thing? Do I need to be task training this? Should this in fact be a theory session? Is it all of the above? And why do I want to do things? Who your learner is, so who they are and what they need. What is the requirement of their learning? Why do they need to be doing that? At what stage in the learning are they? Who are they? And what do they need to learn? So what is it that we are trying to get as our end achievement? Because all of this is going to play a really important role in why we are going to think about the equipment we get. How that technology is going to work and how that technology is going to work for you and whether it can do other things. Is it multifaceted? Can I use it for lots of different things? At one time when I was working at a university, we had catheterization trainers, and we had some for the ODPs and some for the nurses. And the nurses ones were a bit old because they were being used loads, and the ODP ones weren't because they had smaller cohorts, but they had their own. And that was a crazy situation. We just need to buy some and share them certainly within your own department. So how could they be used in other areas? How am I best going to utilize this technology that I've got? And where is it? What's the setting like? How can I make that more real to the environment that these students are going to be in when they complete their training? So the setting, the immersive room, the fake hospital ward, the street, the car park, where am I carrying out simulation? Where am I carrying out training that is going to best suit those learners' needs? And then always back to why. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? Why am I spending this money? Is this the right money to spend? Is this the right equipment? And really kind of repeating those questions to yourself as you're thinking about the technology and the use of it. Oh, and then I've repeated that slide again. See, that's a technology fail. So, and also not spelt learner correctly. So winning at life now. But that does bring me to the conclusion of my presentation. My email address is there. If you did spot spelling mistakes throughout my presentation, feel free to let me know. I'm terrible dyslexic, but hopefully it's given you some entertainment if you have spotted any. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm sure everybody listening, watching will agree. It's been incredibly useful, incredibly insightful. Are you able to stop sharing your screen? Sorry, Emily, I can see myself in mirror form.
Put you
No one
back
needs to
on.
see that, not
Sorry.
me.
Have I done it? See, talk about technology, fail at the final hurdle.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like, start with the why and end with your why is so important. We have got some questions in the chat and in the Q&A, so I'll jump straight into those. So Lindsay would like to know, from your experience, what's one key challenge you've encountered when integrating technology into simulation, and how have you overcome it to ensure a smooth learning experience for your students?
Yes, the new technology integration. It's always really tricky. I think getting everybody on board about what you're buying and why you're buying it is really key. If we're thinking about, it's really important to ensure that faculty understand the technology. There's nothing worse than people not understanding why you've got it or how to use it. And then what you get is, oh, I don't know why we've bought this because it's rubbish and it doesn't work. So taking the time and the investment to spend time with your faculty, to show them the equipment, show them why it's so good, show them how to use it, back to basics teaching with your faculty first, getting them on board before it's released to the students, so staff aren't going into a room with new technology and not really knowing how to work it. And this is where guys like, Simmons Skills, when they're providing you with this technology, how does it work? Can you come and do some more training with us? Can you make sure that these key people have got that? So before it goes out to the masses, make sure your key people know how to use it.
Is that a consideration to take into account when you are looking at new technology? What is the training or support package that can come with this product, or are we just going to be left with a box, not knowing how to start with it?
Yeah, and it is really important. Have I got somebody who can operate this? Have I got somebody who is going to be able to help troubleshoot this? And are my team, certainly from a tech team, really comfortable in how this uses, so they can go out and do that troubleshooting for staff? Because if they like it, they know it, they'll use it, it'll be positive.
There's a question from Fazer. You might be able to answer this one. Do you know what the standards are used to train technicians and facilitators in simulation? Is there a set of standards that everyone should adhere to?
There isn't. It's quite vague. There isn't a particular standard. So there are various guidance out there. So you've got ASPE. So there's the ASPE standards around simulation, but they tend to be more faculty to deliver simulation as opposed to technology, although they're getting there. And then you've got things like INAXL for standards. There is what's the science? I can't think of, my mind has gone blank, but there is a Science Council technical qualification course you can go through. I'm sure there's a technician in this group here who will possibly be able to answer that better than I can. But there is an apprenticeship route that you can go down as a technician, but often that means a place where you can go to get the support to do that. But I think in the most part, a lot of it is support together. There isn't a standard, really.
Joe's popped in the chat. There's RSCI top.
That's the one.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
So, I was thinking this as you mentioned debriefs. I don't know if you've ever done this or whether any of our attendees have ever done this. When we're talking about debriefing, the importance of debriefing, have you ever, with faculty, debriefed on the technology? So you've got this new technology and you're using it. Do you ever sort of take the time to sit down and evaluate what we're using? Are we using it well enough? What else we could do and use it for?
I don't think we do it enough. I think we do it when we get new things. So certainly if I'm thinking about bringing new technology in, we'll try all of these different items and we're going to play with them. We're going to have a go. We're going to look at how user-friendly they are. And I think we tend to do it more in a shopping focus group rather than a debrief, but actually thinking about how well the technology has gone in a session is probably really useful. So meeting with your technical team and your faculty afterwards to kind of go, did that work? I've used a Juno for this, but actually would the Aries have been better, or should we get the sim body out for it next time? Because what were we trying to achieve, and was it achieved? Is really useful for people. We ran a course yesterday, and the head tilt chin lift on a sim body is really, really difficult to achieve in comparison to other mannequins. So we talked about how that affects the learner and their ability to understand that process. So it's thinking about, that impact, but we probably don't do it enough, but we should.
So when you're considering making a purchase, often I'm sure lots of people have had this, you'll get your lovely local sales rep along, who'll come and bring you their latest shiny wares.
Oh, yes.
You've got what's three key questions that should be top of mind when someone does come to do a demonstration with you. Like you've not do lots of things like your whys and your hows, but what is the key things that you want to learn when you've perhaps got only half an hour to have a look at a new product?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to think, first of all, do I need technology for this? Is technology the answer? Because actually, it might not be. And sometimes we try and shoehorn a new bit of technology into every problem that we find because that's what's going to fix it. So it is, again, it's that why. Why am I thinking about this in the first place? And is this the right thought process? I want to know ease of use. I want to know support. Are these people going to sell me something and then I'm never going to see them again? Is this something that is going to require updates and on costs and all of those sorts of things that are hidden, are things that I'm going to want to know? And who else is using it? Can you give me the names of other organizations like mine or similar to mine that are using this? And I always think that a good product will be sold by somebody who's saying, this is a good product and I use it. So, it's great. Everybody will tell you, oh, my product's the shiniest and the best. But who else has used it? Has Bob used it down the road at their college? And how have they got on with it in actuality? Because it's all good and well on a demo or an example or an exhibition stand, but in use, how has it worked out for other people? I think that's really key.
Yeah, that first-hand experience from, like you say, fellow existing users who can tell you exactly how they're using it, what they're using it for, answer some of those how, why, where questions. Yeah, is really, really beneficial. If there are any more questions, please pop them in the chat. We've got a couple more minutes left. I had a question pop into my head, everything that you was discussing. Do you think you can achieve really good fidelity and realism on a really limited budget?
Yes, I do. I do. I really do think you can. I think, the technology is great, but the imagination and the thought and the ability of your instructors or facilitators is what is really key. You can have the fanciest kit in the world and it's still going to be a rubbish experience for your students. But if you've got passionate faculty who understand their subject, who understand why we're doing it, I think you can have really great simulation. And I've seen simulations done with, a pair of trousers that's stuffed with newspaper and a jumper, and that's the casualty on the floor, and you've got to do the sim, and that's your patient, and somebody's literally saying the observations to you, but it has still been an immersive, valuable experience because of the faculty. And sometimes that's down to the environment. So I would say that has probably been more pre-hospital stuff. So it's been, outside in a field in maybe some adverse conditions, and you're having to deal with that. But there's been nothing high tech there, but it's been amazing simulation and a great learning experience. And remembering as well that the sim bit is only a really, really small part of this learning process. That theory, that task capability, but that debrief, that discussion has got to be good. And it's got to be a debrief. It's got to be a discussion. It's not this is what happened. This is the narrative of my day. We started with this. How did it feel? How did it make you feel? What did you get out of this? What's that experience for you? Using debrief appropriately and properly is what makes the simulation good, in my humble opinion.
No, I would agree. That's yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you so much for your presentation today. With lots of thanks in the chat. And it's really insightful, really informative. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, Emily. So the recording is going to be sent to you tomorrow. So like I said, if you want to share it with the rest of your team, absolutely please do. We have our next This Is Simulation episode taking place in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks today. A really exciting one about AI in simulation, talking about new technologies. AI is quite the buzzword at the moment, and we have Juliana Sampson from Coventry University, who is an AI postgraduate researcher and is using AI in simulation and doing lots of research about it. So she's going to be ready to talk you through how you can get the best out of AI. Don't be afraid of it. And the human side of using AI. So please, yeah, use the link there to sign up. And we'd love to see you on the next episode. So once again, thank you so much, Emily, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, joining us for this episode. We look forward to seeing you all again soon.